Today's podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities Incorporated, expert engineers, designers, and manufacturers of steel training towers, burn rooms, and mobile units that are all made in the USA.
Well, even if it's just sitting around or, watching your kids at the playground, my mind could be somewhere else. If that happens on the fire ground, at least I've thought about it. It won't catch me by surprise. My heart rate will still bump up because it's stressful, but I won't then have to process and be under stress that I never thought this would happen before. I'm only dealing with the stress of the event. So that allows you to stay within that moment, and you can bring yourself down using those breathing techniques, relaxing yourself, all the things like that, I'm sure, Rob goes into, and all these guys that teach, getting all that stuff like Rick George, bringing yourself back down into that yellow state or that red state instead of that quote unquote black state where, everything is just a mess.
Right. So I have seen doing certain trainings that certain people aren't comfortable with some of the training I'm getting ready to do because maybe it's kind of claustrophobic or whatever. And I could see in people's faces that they're almost lizard brain. I mean, they're breathing heavy. They're kind of flushed a little bit. And what I would do is I would ask them a question to kind of pull them out of that lizard brain a little bit that they have to consciously think about. For example, what's the third car you've ever owned? What was the color of your mom's car growing up? Stuff that they have to kind of really focus on. And I've had a lot of great luck with that in telling people that stuff like that and teaching, like if you're doing a RIT team, that you can, when you go up to your victim, chances are they're going to be freaked out, completely freaked out. And you should probably train that way and try to pull those people out by practicing that. And I wish I could give the right, somebody taught me this next thing, and I want to get the right, whatever you call it. Anyway, so they told me that when a RIT happens, the battalion chief outside and the person that called the RIT, at that time, it becomes an extremely intimate communication. It's not, engine 1W or whatever. It's like, hey, Bob, calm down a little bit. We got guys coming. And it's about reassuring and bringing them out of that lizard brain. Because if you're trapped and you're in that lizard brain, like I said earlier, heart rate's going up, your breathing's going up, you're going to burn through that bottle way quicker. So it's absolutely imperative to teach people how to calm themselves down or calm each other down.
Yep. And that mental rehearsal aspect of all this really builds with that. If you have that before the event, then you can really build with them through the event. I think if you have no preparation before the event, I don't know if any, no matter how good you are at consoling somebody or bringing somebody down the radio, I don't think there's a chance that person would be able to bring themselves down because they'd just be so much pegged. But, anything's worth a shot to try to get them to kind of relax and go through their protocol and understand that. But, that's why I think a lot of people have gone to the WWW, the who, what, where, instead of all the other things for RIT, because it allows them to, hey, focus 3 things and then I'm good to go. And then, maybe I can get back to panicking if they need to, but try to keep them as cool, calm, and collected as they possibly can be.
Absolutely. I know Dave Mellon of Fire Valor Training, he will go into a building and take all his clothes off and, have his underwear, and he will grab a firefighter, run outside or grab him inside and scream in Spanish that, his family is upstairs or whatever. And his whole goal is to break their OODA Loop and have them recognize that their OODA Loop's broken and how to re-engage. And I think that's amazing because OODA Loop works really well for training as well.
Yep, absolutely. And Gary Lane, those guys that with Teach with Brothers in Battle, they do called the DIY engine. They do the same thing where the forcible entry door opens. The guys, they've seen them do it at live fire. They're on a mask behind the door in their underwear. And as soon as the door pops, they drop the mask and run out and grab the guys screaming. And you're right. You have to reorientate to the situation, say, hey, what am I seeing? You're seeing a panicked parent, even if, you don't understand what they're saying because you don't speak that language or whatever, you can understand that this is a panicked person, right? Like if it's just you run out and you're like, oh, thank God I'm safe. But if you start screaming at me and pointing, something either really important is in there or someone really important is in there. And regardless of whether it's a something or someone, at that point, you can't tell the difference. That you've got to focus back in and say, hey, I got to get back in there. I got to shrug off what just happened, orientate the situation, realize that now I'm probably looking at a higher possibility of somebody trapped. So we need to be better on that primary, or, say, hey, start thinking about VES, the windows that look like bedroom windows. Maybe we can make a more targeted search that way, as opposed to, the engine company just going in and, the ladder company following us down the hallway. But yeah, a lot of that training could really cut down on your loop and get you to go again through that implicit guidance and control arm. And that way, when somebody comes running at you, or, we had a hallway in FDIC that was a 36-inch hallway. It was jammed up with lawnmowers and bicycles, like it is for us. A lot of guys do lawn care in the neighborhood we work at. They pull the lawnmower behind them with a blower on top and a bunch of stuff. And when they come home, they put it in their apartment in the hallway because they don't want to bring it all the way to the house. And so a lot of guys were going in there and getting jammed up because they've never been in a hallway with that kind of stuff and those entanglement hazards, and never processed their minds. But now that they've had that experience, now instead of going through that explicit time where it takes time to, oh crap, what is this? Let me figure it out. Let me figure out how to get over it or through it. Now they at least go back to that implicit mindset. Well, this is what I had to do last time. Move it back, maybe move the hose around it, or just get it out of the hallway in general. And it also teaches them to slow down, right? Like one of the big things about the OODA loop is tempo.
All right, we're back, brother. I'm sorry about that. Little technical difficulties. But we were discussing the OODA loop and everything. Let me ask you this. How much or where does tempo play into this kind of decision making?
So what a lot of people think about when they think about the OODA loop is speed. And, and a lot of people think on the fire guard, I want to save time and effort. And it really is all about tempo, slowing up or speeding down, like I was just saying before, the technical difficulties, and understanding when to speed up and when to slow down. Speed comes from doing away with these wasteful things in training, right? We limit the movements we don't need. Implicit skills, so automatic skills, also increase that speed. All that extraneous movements and activities being eliminated is how we speed up. But where we oftentimes get in trouble is we want to speed up when we should be slowing down. Right. And so that John Boyd in the OODA loop allows us to say, hey, we see a mismatch. Right. So a lot of times on the fire ground, we look for things we know, but really what you should be looking for is mismatches. All right. I see a healthy amount of fire, but not the amount of smoke I expect with that, or a lot of smoke with no fire, or this or that and the other. Something's not adding up. So in that orientation phase, we should downshift immediately, right? Say, hey, something's not right here. It's not what I'm used to seeing. Let me slow down. You can actually help yourself speed up by slowing down at this point, right? So you're taking the time, or making the time to take the time. So in the engine company, when I teach it, don't do the straightest stretch, because that may, on that end, may be the best way to get the line to the door. But on the back end, as you pull through the house, you may have created a pinch point. So as you get 25 feet in the door, now it's raking against the door jamb and you can't get in there as fast. Where if you take 5 seconds on the front end to go out, make a left to make a right, if that makes sense, around so it lines up with the front door. Now you're spending 5 seconds on the front end, slowing down, but on the back end, you're speeding up because you're not having to waste 30 seconds bringing more hose back at the end. So a lot of that is slowing down so we can speed up, right? I think it was, I can't remember the Bruce Lee comment off the top of my head, but he had a really great quote about about tempo. I'm trying to find it on my computer here real quick. Give me a second. He called it that little fragment of time which is most suitable to accomplish effective actions. Right. And I think that's perfect. We should be thinking less in terms of speed and more in terms of tempo, and understand that fragment of time which is most suitable to accomplish our effective actions. Sometimes it's fast. Sometimes that's slow. And we really shouldn't think of it as slow. We should think of it as, I tell my guys, because firefighters don't like to hear, so tactical patience, right? So understand that you may have to slow your walk down a little bit as you do your size up to allow your brain to come out of lizard mode. If you ask somebody to walk across the street, and, I do this in my class. All right, you walk across. I ask you a simple question. What's your name? Jake. Okay. Where are you from? And as you're walking, you're answering it. And then I ask you a complicated math question. And without even thinking about it, you stop, because your brain can't walk and do the higher end cognitive thinking that comes along with doing that high end math problem. So you stop. And a lot of times when I tell people that we don't have a fear problem in the fire service, these people that stop aren't cowards. they're just not processing it the way that they need to. And if you slow it down, allow your brain to catch up, then you can go full bore. Then you can go out. But if you allow yourself normal speed and you're just not getting it, it's not clicking, your brain's not just going to suddenly go, aha. You're not going to allow yourself to catch up. You've got to slow down just a hair. We're just talking milliseconds to seconds here to allow you to catch up. And then you can get back into that higher level thinking. So slowing down to speed up, that tactical patience really pays off in the back end. And that's a lot of what the OODA loop is on our side when we're not talking about disrupting a combatant's OODA loop.
I know some of it seems so contradictory in what we teach. So we always teach the only thing that's going to make the situation better in the fire ground is putting water on the fire as fast as possible. And so that puts people on a track. And then on the other side, we say slow, smooth is fast, kind of your point. And people are like, well, that's contradictory. And I think that if that was a Venn diagram, the middle part would be sets and reps and training. That If you do the training, if you do the job, if you get the sets and reps, you're building up that muscle memory, the mental muscle memory, then it's easy to do that stuff. You're built, like to your point, you're building in that time to not create those pinch points, which is speeding up. So you're getting there as fast as you can, but you're getting there a lot safer and a lot more effective. And I think that's the middle, the bridge that we tend to forget more times than not.
Yeah, that whole slow is smooth is fast. That's just pretty much teaching you to eliminate those extraneous movements, right? Like you're just going from slow is smooth, saying, all right, we're going to get to the point where we master it enough to take away those unnecessary movements. And once we do that, because we've mastered this skill, now we're fast. So it's not saying, hey, you go slower. It's that you get to the point where you can master it and go through it. And, we talk about, Miyamoto Musashi and the mastering things as we go deeper in the class and understanding that's how you get that implicit understanding and that implicit intuition of on the fire ground, through emotional learning and the 10,000 hour rules and stuff like that. That's the easy part. Understanding when to slow it down, even though you've seen it before, is when it starts to get more complicated because like you said, these things are drilled into our minds. Fast water, fast water, fast water. Yes, fast water when appropriate. And it's hard to use, the fire service gets wrapped up in sound bites. And I probably don't book as many classes or make people mad because I refuse to talk in sound bites. I don't want to be Tony Robbins. I don't want to be a slogan. I want to be more in depth because I think what we're lacking in the fire service is a depth to what we talk about. We have such a desire for social media likes and production that we talk in these sound bites, and it's really so much deeper. And once we understand that, hey, if you understand that nothing's ever really right? Everything's a perception on our reality. So whether it's my department, your department, or somebody else's department, when I teach engine company operation, it's very hard for you to do what I do. So we need to have a bigger discussion of how we observe things, how we orient, how we get onto these facts of no one's right. Everybody's got their own way. So let's go into this deeper. Transitional attack may be good for a place that shows up with, my part-time job, which is nice. It's very rural, except for the small downtown. I show up with 2 guys on a fire engine and hope a volunteer comes out. Whereas I go in Newport News and I have 26 guys in the fire ground within 3.5 minutes, 11 of them from my firehouse alone. So the background I have of that really allows me to now take those orientations and those implicit understandings and put it towards functioning. But when all you know is one thing, these sound bites we talk in the fire service really skew what we do. And we need to be really careful about how we talk to people because you start talking about, oh, don't get tank water. Well, hey, listen, in my small little town, I've got 3,000 square foot, 2.5 story Victorians that I need water on quickly. And if I skip the hydrant coming in, I got 2 guys. The next pump is 10, 15 minutes out. I'm not skipping the hydrant. Whereas a lot of guys are speaking from their experience in places saying, hey, skip the hydrant. You can put out most fires with 750 gallons and a second engine can bring you water. Well, that's if your second engine's coming. If it's 10, 15 minutes out, that's a game changer. And so again, we get wrapped up in these slogans of slow, smooth is fast, and fast water on the fire, when really we should be having these much deeper conversations that people are trying to have, but it's very hard on social media because we're so into talking of sound bites or listening to our only selves. And that was the one thing that with the OODA loop has really gotten me into is understanding, listen, There's more than one way to skin a cat. You need to be open to other people's ideas. Really understand that no one's ever really right. It's always your perception of something going on, of how it is. So if you just shift where you're standing versus where I'm standing on the fire ground, we have two very different views.
Absolutely. I always, when I teach new guys, I always tell them that, one of the best things you can do is have actual experience. And that's what makes, in one of my opinions, what makes a really good firefighter is actual experience. And so I tell them, when you go to a fire, actually, there's your view of what happened, and don't forget that. But I would go to every single person that was on that fire ground over the next week or two and get their perception of what happened, what they saw and what they did. And I said, now you're going to take one house fire worth of experience, and you can turn it into, 3, 4, 5 house fires worth of experience, because you're getting everybody's view of it, and you were there. So it's easy for you to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way we do that is through after actions, right? What and hot washes are great. Do them right after the incidents for big things, things that we need to correct right now. When we talk about after actions, now we can actually see what everybody's seeing on the fire ground. And I think that's why helmet cameras are so important in the fire service. I know a lot of people are hesitant because they're worried people will put it on the internet and stuff like that, but it's really important to see. And I use only helmet camera footage in my class for the interactive portion, because YouTube videos of the guy standing on the street corner are great, but that's not how we see the fire ground, right? Things are changing as we're moving. Our position is moved. By the time we step out of the fire engine, something could be completely different. So that's why I use those, because it gives you the different perspectives. But I don't know. I can't get to know the guy's name. It was on Twitter, but he said, and I love this: ruthless after action reports are the lifeblood of improvement. And I think that's one thing the fire service doesn't do well. I don't know if it's because of feelings or what. You critique somebody else's fire and they always say, hey, you weren't there. Or, if it's ego or what it is. And you're right. I'm not critiquing you. I'm critiquing, what we see and what we would have done and other things like that. And I think we really need to probably have after actions where, to be honest, we wear helmets, right? It's going to be full contact, because that's the only way we get better. We shouldn't be afraid to tell somebody, hey, you screwed up. It's not a bad thing. We learn from it. That's one of the ways we move forward. That's the way we improve. But as a fire service, you can burn a block down and everybody pats themselves on the back and says, hey, the fire went out and everybody went home. And that's a terrible measuring stick. Yes. Or the first officer screws up and no one says anything because they're like, oh, that's a 25-year captain. Well, who cares? They made the wrong choice. Let's start thinking about this. Or, 4 guys got hurt. Well, we can't talk about that. Well, why not? When we had our Mayday with the 4 guys fall through the floor, we opened up our critique to every department in the area. So everybody could come in. They were going through it at the same time as all our officers and all our floor personnel. And so they could see in real time what happened and how we're critiquing it. We're not trying to present a clean image of what happened. This is down and dirty how it happened. And the more people can learn from that, the better. That's my one problem with NIOSH reports, is oftentimes you don't get the nitty gritty, where people are like, well, you can't critique this, because you're speaking ill of the dead. And listen, no, man, we're not speaking ill of the dead. But the reason we keep making the same mistakes is because we keep doing the same things over and over again. And we don't want to have that hard discussion. And we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I get that. And maybe it's ego, and it's also maybe it's the way we talk about things. Maybe we should do a nice self-reflection on our own tone, how we talk about things, how we rattle things off without being sympathetic towards somebody else's feelings. And so, it's probably on both ways, but we would definitely need a harsher critique of what we do. If we were critiqued the same way as PD was, you would see bad fire departments all over the news, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're very lucky that no one understands what we do. And there's no, we're always given the benefit of the doubt as we did the best we could. And I think sometimes that's not the case. And we're very lucky that there aren't subject matter experts that dissect our every move and every action on the fire ground.
Well, I tell you, it's funny you talk about the after action report, and I've seen in my past 28 years, I've seen it used as attaboys, and I don't think it's a place for attaboys, and I don't think it's a place for you're an idiot. I think it should be objective information brought to you to improve your job. And I've seen too many times where I've been part of them where I knew we screwed up. and our battalion chief is like, well, you guys did a good job, attaboy. And I'm like, no, just tell us. I always think about the movie Moneyball, and there's a scene where Jonah Hill, Brad Pitt tells Jonah Hill, you're going to release this player. You're going to tell him that we're trading him, and he's like, well, I don't know how to do that. He goes, these are professionals. Just tell them. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try to make it better than it is or worse than it is. Just give them facts. And when we do these after action reports, that's what we need to do. And I think also giving the people the power to critique themselves.
Yep.
In the sense of, okay, Engine One, you were the first in company. Tell them, have a structure to the meeting. What went well? What didn't go well? What do we need to change? And then have them, because I think that's better than me telling you. Now, at some point, they may say, oh, we kicked ass and put it out. And that's when you might say, yeah, but you took a booster line into, a house fire. Let's talk about that. But I think you're right. We don't have the luxury of feelings in our job because improving means saving lives and keeping us safe too. But more importantly, keeping our citizens safe. So we don't have the luxury of feelings. Let's look at our job objectively.
Those rooms should be no place for the faint of heart. They should be treating with a seriousness that transcends rank, right? In that room, there's no rank. There's no captain. There's no battalion chief. There's no deputy chief. There's no firefighter. Everybody's the same because it's the only way you can honestly do it. There shouldn't be finger pointing. A lot of the times things can be fixed by having somebody get up in front of a room and explain what they did. And if they messed up or made the right call, trust me, you'll notice it because they can read the faces. They can read the mood of the room. And so that drives them to then question themselves and question why. And that's how we add to our current repertoire and create new actions. So Boyd had this mental, rehearsal or mental problem called creating snowmobiles, right? And so it's pretty much taking down all these parts and pieces from machines that already existed and taking them apart from the domains that they existed in and putting them together in a new machine. So the tank treads off a tank and the boat motor off a boat and the handlebars off a bike and putting the skis off a ski and putting them together and creating snowmobiles. And that's part of the way you create snowmobiles is you're adding to your experience, your implicit guidance, and then also saying, hey, here's the new part of something I never thought about, or the 20-year captain and the 5-year guy that just went to Water on the Fire down in Pensacola. He can add his 2 bits onto what he learned through experience and training and what he could have done differently in the fire. And that's where things really improve because now you're melding all these different mindsets and point of views into an effective, picture of the fireground with different ideas. And now you really start rolling. And then you're like, hey, next time let's train on this and we'll work on this. And then that's when all this stuff gets going. And then people start looking forward to those after actions. Once it becomes commonplace that everybody does them, people have less of a guilt of going in there because it's not a blame session. It's just more of an explaining what you did. And if you screwed up, you did. And that's fine. We're not going to ride you, but there's definitely going to be room for improvement. And, it definitely sets the organization on a much better path once you're open and honest with your folks and take away that rank structure because people are afraid to talk up.
Right. Now you've taught pretty much you hit all the big stuff, with Andy Fredericks Days, FDIC. What do you got coming up in the future? Where are you going? Where can we find you to take your classes?
I will tell you the name. I only do 2 things a year. I like being home with my family. I like being at work. So I do usually 2 to 3 events a year. The next one coming up is the 9th annual Leadership in the Firehouse Seminar. It's in Burlington County, New Jersey on Saturday, November 19th. I think it's only $25 and it's a full day and you get breakfast and lunch. Should be a good day. I'm doing the first 4 hours on, the OODA Loop and creating a culture of decision-making in your firehouse. So the class covers about 3 hours of the OODA Loop and understanding how it works. And then the last hour is creating a culture within your organization to allow it to be lean and rely on that implicit decision-making amongst all ranks and levels of your department, whether it's, what toilet paper you want to buy, to all the way up to, should we vertically ventilate that roof or make that push for somebody trapped? So, should be a good time. I think we might have one coming up in December. I'm not sure yet. We'll wait to hear back. I'll pass that along to you. You can publicize it on the Facebook and all that stuff. But this is usually when I say that, I do two classes. Love your career, love the fire service. I love it more than most, but it will never love you back the way your family does. And being around my kids and my wife is the most important thing to me, and that's why I limit to 2 times a year. And when I can, I try to bring my family with me. The 2 times I taught last year, we were in New York and Florida, and brought the family on road trips both times, and it was phenomenal. So it's just my little spiel of love the fire service, but it won't love you back. Make it a priority, but realize that family comes first.
I love it, man. I love that. Now, we like to end our podcast with a question. Can you tell me what's the best prank that you've played on somebody or had played on you?
I think my favorite one to do is always the IV drip in the ceiling. That's just a standard go-to one. We've gotten a couple people with taking their mattresses out and, or the box spring out and watching the whole mattress go to the ground. That's a pretty good one. I haven't really played a whole lot. I haven't played any pranks since I've been a boss, because I try to just let the firefighters do that. The best one they've gotten me for is I used to get sent out all the time, detailed. We call it TDY. And one of my firefighters got the chief in it, the battalion chief in on it, one of them. And they called up and it was right before bedtime, 10 o'clock at night. And they're like, hey, you got to go to another firehouse. And I slammed down that phone and, used every curse word underneath the sun. And they let me storm around. And the battalion chief called back in about 30, 45 seconds. He said, I got you. And I'm like, oh, man, you got to be kidding me. I was red-faced. I had enough. Because there's nothing worse than being ready for bed. You already got your workout in, you're showered up, the bed's made, you're just getting ready to go in there, and they timed it perfectly. So they got me pretty good. I'll give them that.
Yeah, it's when they get higher ups involved, that's a good joke.
Oh yeah, it was it's a guy. My old battalion chief's a good friend of mine, and we go to Andy Fredericks every year together, and then the firefighter that set it up goes with us to a lot of conferences as well, and I was working part-time with him at the time as well. So it was, a bunch of jokesters that we all knew each other's buttons and knew how to push them, and it worked out well.
Brother, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been a blast. I've been looking forward to this since we first talked. I'm fascinated by this subject, and I'm fascinated how our brain is actually so more involved in what we do. It used to be we were just, blue collar, just go from point A to point B. We didn't have to think about stuff, but I think over the years we've become a very professional, a very intelligent job. And I think I've said this for a while now that we're in a firefighter renaissance. We're doing so much more, so much less, and we're expected to do even more. And we do it, and we do it well. So I love talking to you about this stuff. I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for being on my podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm sorry. It's a long topic to be so succinct with. And so I apologize if I didn't flesh things out as much as they needed to be. The class does a better job of kind of explaining how it works and how to prep your mind and get your mind right and stuff like that. But it's very hard in just this format without the visuals of the class and looking at things to kind of get those points across. So I should be doing an online one here shortly. I'll pass that along to you, and you can pass that on to your listeners.
Thank you so much, brother. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures and mobile units for 30 years. Make training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.